Beneath the unforgiving blaze of the desert sun, Naya's body hung suspended, bound cruelly to the sharp spines of a towering cactus. Sweat stung her eyes, thick and blistering, as the parched earth seemed to suck every ounce of moisture from her being. Each breath was a labor, ragged and shallow, as though the very air conspired against her will to survive. Her hands, raw and chafed, fought against the coarse ropes biting into her wrists, but the searing heat sapped her strength. Death felt close, yet still she clung to life with stubborn resolve. Around her stretched an endless expanse of scorched sand and cracked stone, a barren wasteland where not even a scrawny rattlesnake dared to linger. The heat radiated off the ground in waves, blurring the horizon beneath a relentless, merciless sky. Wind whispered, like a cruel phantom, stirring the cactus needles that tore at her skin, a relentless reminder of her captivity. Water was a distant memory, replaced by the harsh kiss of dust on her cracked lips and tongue. The desert was a shade of hell painted in ochres and reds, and she was trapped at its heart. Naya's eyes flickered open, heavy with exhaustion, yet burning with defiance. She bit back a groan, summoning the fragmented shards of her fading strength. "I will not be forgotten," she told herself, the words a fragile anchor amid the torment. The sun clawed at her skin with brutal fingers, but somewhere deep inside, an ember of hope refused to extinguish. She was a warrior, a daughter of the Sioux, forged in spirit, though broken in body, and even ravens dared not claim her today. Suddenly, the faint crackle of dry grass underfoot stirred her alertness, a sound too deliberate to be the wind. Through the haze appeared a lone figure, Tawa, cut from the same fierce fabric, but marked by stories different than hers. His eyes, sharp and watchful beneath a hood shadowed with dust, assessed her with a mixture of suspicion and something kinder, something reluctant. The world they inhabited was too harsh, their histories too tangled, to offer trust easily. Naya's gaze met his, wary and guarded, her body taut with distrust. Could this stranger be a savior or a new threat? With calculated care, Tawa knelt, his hands steady but firm as they reached for the ropes that imprisoned her. The cords bit into her wrists, and as they gave way, a breath untouched by violence slipped from her lips. Yet, tension thickened like desert heat between them, unspoken questions shimmering in the dry air. How much alliance could be born from chains broken on such hostile ground? For a moment, silence stretched, the weight of their separate pasts hanging heavy, unresolved. Then Tawa's eyes narrowed, catching a faint mark in the sand. Fresh footsteps trailing westward. Soldiers, white men, riding hard and fast, their presence, a shadow creeping over the desert's edge. His voice was low but urgent, a warning carried on the brittle wind. They are close. We have little time. Naya's heartbeat quickened, the fragile ember inside roaring anew. Not just for survival, but for the battle that yet lay ahead. The desert had bound her to the cactus under the burning sun. Fate had pulled Tawa into her story. Their paths were entwined now, poised on the edge of fire and blood. Many fellow travelers who've journeyed with us through these forgotten lands have told tales of fate or YouTube's tricksy algorithms, snatching their subscriptions away without warning. Before the next perilous trail unfolds and another twist takes hold, take a swift look below this video and make sure you're still signed up with our band so you won't lose the thread of our tale. We don't want you to miss a single voice echoing from this valley. Check your subscription now and join our saga. The bitter sun clawed at their backs as Tawa half-supported Naya between the jagged shadows of a stubborn mesquite tree. Each step was slow, a careful dance with exhaustion and trust newly tentatively kindled, yet fragile. Naya's throat burned with a desperate thirst, matched only by the gnawing uncertainty in her eyes. Every breath she drew carried the weight of suspicion, the burden of unspoken accusations between them. Tawa's hand, steady yet cautious, brushed hair from her sweaty forehead. His rough voice broke the silence, low and deliberate. We must find water soon. This desert will not wait for the weak. Naya's gaze flickered toward the distant hills, swirling heat mirages boiling against sandstone cliffs. The secret she carried was not just a burden for her alone. It drew danger like vultures circling wounded prey. She fought the rising tide of doubt. Could she lean on a man whose face told stories of battles long past and loyalties tested by blood? His eyes, sharp and unreadable, betrayed the weight he carried. They want you, he said abruptly, voice dropping. A faction, men who would capture you for what you hold. His words were edged with warning, yet his posture bore the unmistakable trace of resolve. Naya swallowed the lump in her throat. That secret, the sacred symbol etched into her spirit, was more perilous than most dared to believe. It linked her to an ancient prophecy, whispered only in the dark fires of their elders. If revealed, it could unite or shatter their people. Their footsteps crunched softly over the cracked earth as they sought a hollow near the roots of a scorched cottonwood. Shade was a fleeting ally here, yet it was refuge enough, brief respite from the relentless sun. Tawa knelt beside a shallow pool of muddy water. He cupped the filth and offered it to Naya, ignoring the faint curl of disdain on her lips. She barely hesitated, the water sweet in its scarcity, a small balm to her ravaged body. Their eyes locked, the unspoken dance of mistrust yielding, step by measured step, to necessity. The desert tests more than body, Tawa murmured, voice folding into the dry wind. Trust, like water, must be found where least expected. Naya nodded, the hard lines of her jaw softening for a moment. Despite the past that cleaved them, different bands, different tales of bloodshed and betrayal. Here, their fates intertwined like the stubborn roots beneath their feet. They settled into a tense rhythm, moving with care through saguaros and brittle grasses, shadows lengthening as the sun dipped below the horizon. Each sound, the distant call of a crow, the rustle of brittle leaves, seemed amplified in the gathering dusk. Danger was not a distant echo, but a living pulse. Tawa glanced behind, scanning the wind-swept plains for any trace of their pursuers. His voice, when it came, was barely more than a whisper, but sharp enough to cut through the mounting tension. They follow, soldiers and enemies alike. You are not safe. Naya clenched her fists, the memory of ropes biting into her wrists, fresh and raw. Defiance flared in her chest. Then we cannot walk alone. Vulnerability touched her words. Not weakness, but the hard-earned courage to embrace an uncertain alliance. We move together. For now, he replied, revealing no hint of the battles his mind waged. Loyalty, suspicion, the ghosts of old enmities, all tangled in that single statement. Night drew its dark veil across the desert. Above, sharp stars blinked cold and distant, indifferent watchers to the fragile alliance forged in heat and peril. The shadows deepened, and the wind whispered words only the wise could hear. Suddenly, from the east, the rhythmic pounding of hooves shattered the fragile peace. The sound swelled, harsh and unrelenting, a warning carved in thunder. Naya tensed, muscles coiled, like a spring ready to snap. Tawa's eyes darkened, his hand moving in a silent signal, urgency painted in shadow. "They're coming," he said, voice tight with grim certainty. The desert held its breath as horsemen emerged like ghosts from the twilight haze, their presence a storm on the horizon. The chase had begun anew, and with it, the fragile thread of trust stretched taut beneath the burning sun. The journey ahead was perilous, bound by secrets and pursued by shadows. Yet, for better or worse, they must walk it side by side. Because in this land of unforgiving sun and shifting loyalties, survival demanded more than strength. It demanded an alliance forged in fire and fear. And somewhere beyond the cold stars and cracked earth, destiny waited, unforgiving, relentless, inevitable. The fading light stretched long shadows across the rough-hewn camp, where the weary figures of Tawa and Naya had found a temporary refuge amid the scattered mesquites and rocky outcrops. The air, still, heavy from the heat of the day, carried a brittle edge as the sun sank behind distant cliffs, setting the sky ablaze in bruised oranges and purples. For a moment, the desert held its breath, a fragile pause before the storm of fears and secrets that now pressed down on them. Suddenly, the distant crunch of hurried footsteps fractured the uneasy calm. Emerging from the haze was Kiona, the sharp-eyed young huntress from Tawa's band, her figure swift and purposeful. She carried a small bundle of supplies slung over a weather-beaten shoulder, her face drawn tight with news too grim to wait. Tawa's gaze sharpened instantly, taking in the slight tremble in Kiona's lips and the shadow that flickered behind her dark eyes. Without a word, she approached, handing over pieces of dried meat, a scraped leather water pouch, and a small pouch of herbs. Each offering was practical, but it was the weight of her next words that pulled silence over the group like a gathering storm. "An army," Kiona said in a low, harsh whisper, voice barely rising above the crackle of dry twigs beneath her boots. "A white military expedition sweeps this land. Men armed and merciless. They search relentless for the one you carry, Naya. Her eyes flickered toward the Sioux woman, heavy with the burden of truth. "But they're not alone," Kiona added, eyes narrowing. "There's a faction among the Sioux, too. Hostile warriors from a rival band, bound by old grudges, hardened by blood, eager to claim you before those soldiers do." She spat into the dust, as if burning old wounds into the earth itself. "They'll stop at nothing." Naya's heart hammered against her ribs, the weight of every whispered prophecy crashing back with renewed fury. The symbol she bore, a carved amulet worn close to her breast, hidden beneath her tunic, seemed to pulse in the fading light, its power unspoken yet undeniable. It tied her not just to her lineage, but to the fragile hope of a future, stitched together from the ashes of tribal strife. Her eyes, deep pools of worn defiance, met Kiona's. "They want to harness the secret," Naya said softly, voice trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve. "To turn the prophecy into chains or weapons." Tawa stepped closer, his presence a wall between hope and despair. "If that secret falls to the wrong hands, the balance will shatter. The Sioux will bleed under the sword of their own making." The three stood close beneath the endless sky, shadows lengthening into the shapes of impermanence and fear. The desert's quiet was a thin veil. Behind it lurked the hammering hooves and cruel intentions of those who would hunt them down. Yet closer still were the fractures within their own people, fractures that twisted loyalty and honor into dangerous edges. The campfire flickered uncertainly as nightfall wrapped the land in darkness stitched with sharp starlight. Tawa traced a finger along a rough map drawn in the dust, pointing toward jagged hills, believed to shelter an abandoned cave, one the elders once whispered of as sacred and secret. "We must move before dawn," he urged. "Rest is a luxury we can no longer afford." Naya nodded, feeling the weariness seep into her bones, but also a fierce determination kindling fierce enough to burn through the desert's endless night. The journey ahead was no longer just about survival. It was a desperate race against betrayal and time. As silence settled, Naya's thoughts spiraled back to her past, memories half remembered, veiled in pain and secrecy. The symbol she bore was not mere ornamentation. It was a sigil of power passed down from ancestors, a key to ancient wisdom and unity, yet also a mark that carried curses, both real and feared. The warriors who sought her either wished to wield that power or shatter it utterly. Kiona's gaze softened slightly, seeing the weight that shadowed Naya's proud shoulders. "You're different," the huntress murmured, almost reverent. "Not just a warrior, but a living bridge. If they understand what you hold, they'll tear the tribes apart." Tawa glanced toward the darkened horizon, hands clenched, his voice low. "We have enemies without and within. None will hesitate to use poison, steel, or fire if it means control." The night deepened, and the wind rose, a slow, mournful sigh. Over barren earth, the camp stirred as every member stirred uneasily, clutching weapons and dreams alike. Trust remained as fragile as dry grass beneath their feet. But the tangled threads of fate had woven these disparate souls together, forging a fragile alliance out of necessity. Overhead, the first star appeared, a pinprick of cold light in the vast sky. Then a second, then many more, distant and eternal, as if the universe watched silently as their fight unfolded beneath it. Suddenly, the sharp crack of rifle fire shattered the fragile stillness, jolting hearts and blood alike. From the shadows beyond the camp's edge, the sharp whistle of an arrow streaked toward them, thudding into a tree with a menacing thrum. The fire flickered, and a chorus of urgent voices rose as warriors leapt to arms. Tawa's eyes blazed. Ambush! His voice was a harsh command, his body coiling to meet the threat. Naya dropped to a crouch, hands searching for her bow, every nerve taut. The air was torn with the steel cries of battle, a violent storm erupting beneath the darkening sky. The camp erupted into chaos as the enemy descended with merciless fury. The soldiers, disciplined volley, echoing against the land, and the rival Sioux' savage war cries, carving deep wounds in the night. In the heart of the turmoil, Naya's eyes met Tawa's. No longer mere allies, but bound by blood and fire. The desert's cruel sun was gone, but another blaze had begun, one that would test their strength, their faith, and the secret that could either save or destroy them all. The violent ambush shattered the night, and with it, the fragile hope of peace. The desert night pressed heavy around them, a vast, dark sea mottled with stars that burned cold and indifferent overhead. Tawa struggled to steady his breath, grimacing as the sharp sting of blood mixed with dust seeped from a wound along his ribs. His footsteps slowed, under the weight of pain and exhaustion, yet his grip remained firm as he half-supported Naya through the cracked earth. Her skin shimmered faintly beneath the moonlight, sweat and grime etched deep into her weary muscles. She stumbled once, the pain from her own bruises a distant echo against the urgency in Tawa's voice. His hand tightened on her arm, a silent plea to hold fast, to keep walking despite the howling emptiness around them. Each breath she drew carried the bitter taste of dry earth, and her chest rose unevenly beneath the threadbare tunic, the secret she bore pulsing faintly against her skin like a living heart. "We can't stop," she whispered. Voice raspy, fragile as cracked leather. "They'll find us." Her words broke, carried away on the still night breeze. Tawa's eyes were dark pools, reflecting their shared pain, but also a flicker of stubborn fire. "I won't let them catch you," he promised, low and unyielding. A warrior's vow, born from hardship and brotherhood, even as the lines between friend and foe blurred beneath the desert cold. Through the brittle shadows, the story between them twisted and wound tighter. Two souls tethered by danger and faith, yet still distant, still cautious. They moved slowly now, toward a sparse ridge marked by jagged stones and brittle sage. The only known refuge whispered among Tawa's people, an ancient cave hidden from the world's greedy eyes. Naya's throat ached, dry and swollen as the truth she'd carried, locked deep within her heart, finally escaped in a tremor of confession. "I was left tied to that cactus for a reason," she said, voice low, breaking the silence like a fragile branch snapping beneath their feet. "What I hold, it's more than a secret. It's the knowledge of a prophecy, one that speaks of unity, but also of war. Tawa's gaze hardened. A gift that can shape the fate of tribes, or shatter them to dust. His fingers brushed over the etched symbol hidden beneath her clothing, sensing its power even in shadow. It is feared because it is true. Naya's eyes flicked toward the distant horizon, where the faintest glimmer of dawn threatened to bleed through the night's grasp. They saw me as a threat or a tool. That's why I was bound, because in the wrong hands, this knowledge could ignite a war that consumes us all. Every step toward the cave was a battle of will, each breath a defiance of the desert's relentless hunger for weakness. Tawa adjusted his hold on her, not as a captor, but as a guardian bound by necessity. Then we survive together, or don't survive at all. His words were not soft, but they held a fragile warmth beneath their weight. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it a silence more ominous than the night itself. Somewhere beyond the rim of darkness, a shadow moved, deliberate, patient, watching. Hidden eyes focused on the wounded pair, unseen but unblinking. Naya shivered, despite the dry heat lingering in the air. "We are not alone," she breathed, sensing the presence lurking in the distance. An unspoken threat folded itself into the quiet, tightening like a noose. Ahead, the cave's jagged mouth yawned like the maw of some ancient beast, promising shelter, yet offering no comfort. Tawa slowed their pace, careful now, every muscle tense as he scanned the horizon for signs of their pursuers. His voice barely above a whisper. "We cannot afford another fight. Not here. Not like this. Rest will come only after we find safety." Naya sank against a rocky outcrop at the cave's entrance, her body trembling with pain and uncertainty. Yet beneath the physical torment, there was a fierce spark, an ember of resolve that refused to die. The prophecy was heavy on her shoulders, but heavier still was the choice, to trust those who fear what she carries, or stand alone against the storm. Tawa crouched beside her, his gaze steady and resolute. "Tomorrow we will continue, but tonight we watch and prepare. They will come." From the shadows, a figure cloaked in dark linen observed with cold intent, eyes glinting beneath a hood drawn tight against the desert chill. The silent witness to their flight remained unseen, a predator poised to strike when the stars aligned just right. The wind whispered secrets only the night could understand, as Naya and Tawa settled among the rocks, wounds raw but spirit unbroken. Somewhere far off, the desert held its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Under the vast, indifferent sky, the hunter's eyes never wavered, fixing on the fragile band of survivors. The war for their fate was far from over. As the moon dipped behind a distant ridge, the shadow crept closer, preparing to unleash a darkness none could outrun. The relentless sun had climbed high when Naya, steady but flushed with fatigue, took the lead. Tawa's pace faltered, his breaths came shallow, pierced by the sharp sting of his wounded ribs. Yet no murmur of complaint escaped him, only the silent promise of protection, as he half supported her, with a grip both firm and fragile at once. Their goal was distant. A refuge whispered only in cautious tones among their people. An ancient sanctuary, a cave nestled within jagged cliffs, sacred ground marked by time and secrecy. Naya's cracked lips parted slightly, drawing in the dry desert air as she glanced backward, as if willing the past and future to stay at bay. "This path," she began, voice nearly swallowed by the heat haze. "It's the only hope left for us. But the journey strips everything away. Water, strength, even faith." Her gaze met Tawa's. "You know what lies ahead. Still, you follow." His eyes, dark and sharp with unspoken stories, softened ever so slightly. "I follow because your fight is mine, even if the reasons twist beneath the same sky." His voice was low, threading through the tension like a quiet river. "The prophecy you carry, it binds more than just your fate." A faint exhale, weighed by knowledge he dared not share fully. Each step forward was a negotiation, a prayer to the unforgiving land. The sun hammered down relentlessly, turning the sand into a cruel mirror of their weariness. Shadows fled beneath their slow rhythm, and thirst gnawed deeper than wounds. Naya's skin, sunburned and tight, took on the color of burned earth, yet her eyes burned brighter, an ember glowing stubborn against the desolation. As dusk stretched its thinning fingers, hunger and fear in equal measure, the desert offered no mercy. Jagged mesquite branches scraped at their clothing. Brittle grass cracked underfoot, echoing soft warnings of their vulnerability. Distant crows cawed a harsh lament, circling the shifting haze where the horizon blurred into a spectral haze of heat and dust. Between them, silence bloomed, heavy, ripe with questions neither dared voice. Tawa's hand brushed briefly against Naya's arm, a flicker of reassurance amid uncertainty. "The cave is close," he said slowly, voice rough but steady. "We must keep moving. Rest will not save us until we are there." Naya nodded, swallowing the ache in her throat. The secret she guarded was more than a burden. It was a lightning rod for fate and doom alike. The sacred symbol hidden beneath her tunic pulsed faintly, a heartbeat only. She could hear, a tether to legends long whispered by fires now cold. "Others see me as either a weapon or a beacon to hunt," she confessed, each word a fragile thread unraveling beneath the weight of truth. "The ones who tied me to that cursed cactus, they knew. They feared what I carry." Tawa's lips pressed into a thin line. "Not all wish for peace. Some crave the power to fracture." The wind shifted, dry and sudden, carrying an ominous silence heavy as stone. Somewhere, beyond the reach of fading daylight, eyes watched, calm, calculating, cloaked in shadow. Naya shivered, senses prickling with unseen menace. "We're not alone," she whispered, voice a ghost caught between hope and dread. The cave yawned before them, a dark chasm carved boldly into the burning cliffs, promising sanctuary, yet offering no comfort. Rocks jutted sharply, jagged and unwelcoming, like the gaping maw of some ancient beast. They approached cautiously. Tawa's eyes scanned every crevice, every flicker of movement. "This is where we hold," he murmured. "For now, the night will guard us, but danger will not rest. Carefully, they settled near the entrance. Naya's body sagged against the cool stone. A brief reprieve from the hammering sun and the ragged blade of exhaustion. The ache deep within her, a mixture of physical pain and a heavy destiny, pressed outward, shadows darkening her gaze. Tawa sank beside her, fingers instinctively searching for the hidden strength nestled within. "You carry a burden that could unite or destroy," he said quietly, voice threaded with reverence and fear alike. "But alone, none of us survive." Naya closed her eyes, heart heavy with the weight of a prophecy that whispered of war as much as unity. "If they find me here," she said softly, "there will be no sanctuary left." A sudden rustle from the cavern's dark mouth interrupted the stillness. Both tensed, muscles coiled and ready, breath hitching in the silence. Far beyond, the night's cold eyes blinked patiently, watching, waiting, scheming. Under the vault of stars, ancient and indifferent, the fragile hope they carried seemed to flicker against a gathering storm. In the darkness beyond the cave, shadows moved with silent menace, their enemies drawing closer. The war for Naya's soul, for the fate of the Sioux, was about to ignite anew. The council fire crackled, its orange flames casting deep shadows across the worn faces gathered beneath the vast desert sky. Naya stood stiff and resolute, the weight of the moment pressing down upon her like the unforgiving sun that had chased them here. Around her, the tribe's leaders, weathered men and women hardened by years of drought and conflict, bared the silent tension of old wounds reopened. A cold wind swept through the gathering, scattering dry leaves and whispers alike. At the center, Tawa stepped forward, unwavering, his gaze steady as he spoke with a voice carved from years of solitude and battle. "This woman before you carries not only a burden, but the hope of our people. Her honor is ours to defend, as is the chance for redemption long denied." Murmurs shifted across the circle. Some elders exchanged wary looks, shadows of distrust flickering in the firelight. They saw not a symbol of unity, but a threat, a crack in the fragile peace, a harbinger of war. The dissidents among them were vocal in their opposition, their voices sharp like desert thorns weaving doubt. One elder, his beard as white as bleached bone, spat onto the dust. "She carries a secret that could ignite the fires of destruction between our bands. To protect her is to invite ruin upon us all." His words hung heavy in the heavy air, slicing through the tentative calm. Naya's jaw tightened, but she held her ground. Her eyes met his, fires of determination blazing fiercely beneath the gathering dusk. "The secret I bear is not a weapon of war, but a wisdom of peace. Our clans do not have to be enemies fighting over broken pasts. I have seen the path, ancient and true, that can bind us all." Tawa nodded solemnly. "We cannot ignore the past mistakes. I accept the shame I carry, but it must not chain us to endless bloodshed." He glanced at Naya, his voice steady. "Together we may find redemption." The council grew restless, tension twisting tighter with every breath. Outside the circle of firelight, the desert lay silent but watchful. as if even the land sensed the fragile threads about to snap or weave anew. Suddenly, a distant cry pierced the quiet, sharp, urgent. The leaders froze, ears straining. The desert's stillness shattered again, this time by a messenger bursting into the clearing, dust swirling around his worn boots. "They are upon us," the rider gasped, eyes wide with dread. "The cloaked ones, the shadowed group we feared, have invaded our allies' camp to the east. Civilians are taken, homes burned. They threaten to raze everything unless we surrender Naya." A gasp rippled through the council. Naya's heart pounded, the weight of their fate settling like iron in her chest. Faces hardened with resolve and dread turned toward the horizon, where beyond the amber glow, desolation crept like a living thing. Tawa's voice rose, firm and raw, cutting through the fear. "We stand at a crossroads. Our clanship fractures from within, while enemies surround us outside. We must set aside grudges and fight as one, or watch our world burn." The leaders exchanged glances, some nodding reluctantly, others with defiant resolve. The war encroached not only on their land but on their souls. Loyalties would be tested, alliances forged in fire. Naya stepped forward, voice clear, trembling with passion. "I will not hide in shadows while our people suffer. I will use the wisdom I carry to unite, to protect, whether accepted or despised. We must rise as one, refuse this destruction." The council's murmurs softened, the flickering embers of hope battling despair in the cold night air. The desert bore witness, the past's ghosts and present's fears marching toward one inevitable destiny. From the rocks above, Tawa cast a wary glance into the dark horizon. The night thrummed with the distant thunder of hooves and the ominous whisper of plans set in motion. The camouflaged riders had struck swiftly and without mercy. As the firelight flickered, shadows deepened, and silent vows were forged among the gathered tribes. Tomorrow's battle loomed near, stitching foes and allies into a reluctant brotherhood. The night had barely begun when the haunting news arrived. The shadowed group had broken through their allies' defenses, capturing innocents and igniting flames that threatened to consume all. In that charged silence, the fragile hope for unity stood on the edge of a blade, balanced precariously between salvation and ruin. The tribe stirred with restless energy as dawn painted the rugged cliffs in pale gold. Naya stood at the forefront, her eyes fierce beneath the weight of the night's trials. She exhaled slowly, feeling the heavy burden settle onto her shoulders, not from the journey or the wounds, but from the choices that throbbed like an unhealed scar in her chest. The air was thick with tension as the council gathered amidst scattered stones and ancient bones beneath the wide open sky. Weathered faces, etched with lines carved by drought and loss, watched her with a blend of suspicion and quiet hope. The past wariness spread like wildfire among the elders, some clinging to old grudges as shields against fear, others craving the fragile promise she offered. A gust stirred the dry grass, and Tawa stepped forward, his voice steady like riverbed stone. This woman walks not alone, but with the spirit of our ancestors guiding her. Her honor is ours to defend. Let us not let old mistakes shadow the chance for redemption. The elder with snow-white beard spat fiercely onto the dust, his voice a razor cutting through the stillness. She carries a secret, one that could ignite the fires between our bands. To protect her is to invite ruin. His eyes burned with memories too painful to speak aloud. Naya's gaze swept across the circle, unyielding. It is not a weapon, but wisdom. Old wounds need not bleed anew. I have seen the path of unity, a flame that can rekindle hope, not destroy it. Murmurs rose, flickering like restless embers caught in the wind. Some nodded, cautious but willing. Others hardened their eyes, their loyalty chained to fear. Tawa's tone darkened, but remained resolute. I carry the shame of ancient wrongs, but I will not let that chain claim us all. Together, perhaps we can forge a different future. Voices rose and fell, the council a storm of tension and fragile trust. The land itself seemed to hold its breath beneath the vast vault of sky, as fate balanced precariously. Suddenly, a distant cry tore through the quiet. Silence snapped. The assembled turned as a rider burst through the dusk, dust swirling around his worn boots. "They come," the messenger gasped, voice trembling. "The cloaked ones, the shadowed group we feared, have stormed our allies' camp. Civilians were taken, homes burned. They threaten to raze all unless we surrender Naya." A sharp wind sliced the air, whispering warnings as the firelight flickered and shadows stretched longer. Naya's heart hammered, a heavy drum echoing through her veins. The faces around her hardened to stone, the flame of resolve kindling in eyes now wide with dread and fury. Tawa's voice rose above the murmurs, raw and commanding. "We stand at the edge of a chasm. Our clans fracture within, even as enemies circle. We must set aside old wounds. Fight as one, or watch all be lost to flame." Some elders nodded, reluctant but galvanized. Others clenched fists in silent protest, caught in the pull of loyalty and fear. Naya stepped forward, voice clear, even as it trembled with fierce conviction. "I will not hide in shadows while our people burn. I carry the wisdom to unite, to protect. Whether they accept it or not, we rise, together." The fire crackled, swallowing her words in its hungry blaze, as hope wove fragile threads through the night air. Tawa's gaze flicked toward the dark horizon beyond the camp, where shadows moved like creeping vultures. Hoofbeats thundered distantly, a reminder of the tempest brewing. The night sang with the voices of unseen horses and whispered plans in the dark. From the rocky heights, the tribe's watchers observed, breath bated, hearts pounding. The shadowed group, the ones cloaked in silence and menace, had struck fast and without mercy. Their allies' camp had fallen. Civilians were prisoners. Flames licked the sky. The fragile alliance now faced its ultimate test. The war had come to their doorstep, and the battle for their people's survival began anew. Under a sky brushed with twilight's first hues, Naya lay curled against the rough-hewn stones of the forgotten sacred place. The earth beneath her was cool, a stark contrast to the sun-baked desert she'd fled. Pain wrapped its relentless fingers around her ribs and limbs, but a quieter, deeper transformation was underway, a flame igniting inside her that nothing could quell. The symbols etched into the amulet, resting against her chest, glimmered faintly, pulsing with a rhythm tied not only to her heartbeat, but to an ancient power long whispered among her people. It was here, in this secluded refuge, that the true meaning of her burden began to unravel. A soft shuffle stirred the shadows, and Naya's eyes cracked open. From the dim veil stepped an old man, his steps measured and reverent. His face was a map of 1,000 harsh winters, with eyes that held storms and wisdom in equal measure. The air around him carried the scent of dried sage and cedar smoke, a balm for the spirit. "You carry more than pain, daughter of the Sioux," he said, his voice a low murmur that blended with the desert's quiet breath. "The symbol you bear is a vessel of our ancestors' legacy, a power to heal or divide, to unite or destroy. Few understand its true nature. Even fewer respect its weight." Naya's gaze rested on him steadily, suspicion mingling with desperate hope. "Why now? Why here?" she asked, her voice raw like cracked leather. The elder inclined his head toward the cave's heart, where ancient petroglyphs spoke stories in silent stone. "Because only in the shadow of silence can truth emerge. Your path was set long before you took your first breath, entwined with the fate of our people. But the choice is not fixed. It bends with courage, with understanding." He knelt beside her, producing a small pouch woven from hide, filled with herbs that smelled sweet and wild. "Drink this. Let it soothe your wounds and awaken what slumbers beneath." As the bitter liquid brushed Naya's tongue, warmth spread slowly through her body, intertwining with the raw ache. The elder's eyes never left her face as he whispered fragments of prophecy, words wrapped in metaphor, yet blazing with urgency. "The blood moon rises, and with it the scales will tip. Those who seek to control your secret will move with shadow and steel. But those who walk beside you now, their spirits are bound with yours." A sudden scrape echoed near the cave's edge. Naya's muscles tensed, pain forgotten amid rising adrenaline. From the dusk emerged Tawa, his silhouette etched against the fading light, eyes sharp and breath ragged. He approached without hesitation, kneeling by her side. "I found you," he said simply, voice unwavering despite the dust clinging to his skin. Naya's hand trembled as she reached for his, the fragile thread between them finally pulling taut. "Together," she whispered, "we face whatever comes." His fingers closed over hers, a silent pledge forged in the crucible of shared struggle. Around them, the ancient walls seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of their people, a reminder that their destinies were no longer solitary wanderings, but entwined journeys toward an uncertain horizon. The elder rose slowly, eyes narrowing into a shadowed glaze, as a fierce wind rattled the cave's mouth. "The time draws near," he warned. "The traitor watches and waits, sowing discord with poisoned words and a heart darkened by envy. His arrival will shatter even the strongest bonds. Night's chill deepened as Tawa shifted protectively beside Naya, both acutely aware that their fragile sanctuary was a beacon to enemies drawn like vultures to exposed prey. The desert was no longer just a wilderness. It was a battlefield where every heartbeat could mean survival or death. High above, the scattered stars glimmered like ancient sentinels. Below, in the shadowed refuge, two souls merged resolve and fear, rolling together like thunderstorms gathering on the horizon. Suddenly, the unmistakable thrum of hoofbeats shattered the stillness, a storm bearing down fast and merciless. The traitors' forces rode hard, their silhouettes cutting through the darkness with lethal intent. Tawa tightened his grip on Naya's hand. "The final battle comes," he said grimly. "The war for our people's future begins now." Their eyes met, burning with fierce determination and unspoken fears. In this moment, beneath the indifferent cosmos, fate pulled tight the last fraying threads and plunged them into the firestorm waiting beyond the cave's mouth. The sun beat mercilessly upon the cracked earth, casting long shadows from the rocky ridge as warriors gathered in tense silence. Naya, her body still wounded but spirit unyielding, stood at the forefront. The sacred amulet, heavy beneath her tunic, pulsing faintly, a heartbeat carrying the legacy of forgotten ancestors. Beside her, Tawa's eyes burned fiercely with unwavering resolve. The shadow of his injury softened only by the certainty of their purpose. Around them, the tribe's fractured bands melded reluctantly together. The past's old wounds, still raw, but overridden by the desperation of survival. The council's debates were replaced now by steeling for battle, swords drawn, bows strung, and hearts steeled against the darkness looming like thunder on the horizon. With a measured breath, Naya raised her voice, steady and commanding. "Today, we stand not as scattered tribes, but as one people. The shadowed traitor who sought to divide us will find only our unity in response. The secret I carry is not a curse, but a bond, our hope, our future." Tawa stepped forward, adding, "The enemy believes fear can fracture us, but courage and truth will be our shield. We fight not just for ourselves, but for the generations yet to come." A murmur of assent spread through the gathered warriors, the firelight glinting in their eyes like the dawn breaking over a jagged ridge. The elders, once doubtful, now stood with measured nods, the weight of ancient grudges finally yielding to the necessity of the moment. From the rising dust on the distant plain, the clatter of hooves thundered, heralding the final storm. The traitors' mounted forces approached swiftly, cloaked in the same cold menace that had haunted their journey. Yet the fractured battle lines had solidified into a living fortress of resolve. Naya and Tawa stood side by side, their hands briefly clasping in silent promise before each drew their weapons. The desert air crackled with tension, every breath, every heartbeat a drumbeat in the war to come. The clash erupted beneath the blazing sun. Arrows screamed like thunderbolts, the sharp ring of steel against steel echoing through the canyons. Naya moved with fierce grace, her movements a blend of ancestral wisdom and raw desperation. Each strike was a prayer, a plea for peace, forged in blood and sacrifice. Tawa guarded her flank, his injured side pulsing with pain, yet his spirit unbroken. His eyes never left the enemy's movements, anticipating each cunning trap and breaking each assault with unwavering strength. Amid the chaos, a shadow moved closer, a figure cloaked and masked. The traitor revealed himself, his eyes alight with bitter envy and dark hunger. He wielded weapon and word with equal malice, seeking to break the fragile alliance. But Naya met him without fear. "Your greed will not prevail," she declared, voice ringing across the fray. "You sought to split us, but you have only forged us stronger." Their duel was fierce and relentless, clashing wills as much as blades. The desert seemed to hold its breath, the very air charged with the weight of their battle. But in the end, it was not strength alone that won the day. It was the unity of a people and the truth carried in Naya's heart. The traitor fell, defeated by the strength of those he betrayed, his dark influence shattered like dust upon the wind. As the last of the enemy forces scattered beneath the unforgiving sun, the tribe's warriors let out a ragged cheer. Victory won not just by sword, but by the courage to trust in one another. Bloodied but unbowed, Naya stood in the center of that battered, dust-strewn field. Tawa approached, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You have carried our hope through fire and shadow," he said quietly. "Today, you are more than a symbol. You are our guide." The elders stepped forward, their solemn faces framed by the rising heat. One, the eldest with eyes like polished bone, spoke with reverence. "Naya, heir to the ancient wisdom, your path has been long and fraught with sacrifice. The prophecy you bear is the light that will bind our clans, healing old wounds and forging new futures." The tribes gathered close, the fierce lines of suspicion softened by shared triumph. The desert around them seemed to exhale, a moment suspended, as if time itself honored their unity. As twilight crept over the rugged landscape, the sky ablaze with fiery hues, Naya and Tawa climbed a ridge overlooking their reclaimed land. The wind whispered gently through the grass and rocks, carrying the scent of renewal. Naya's eyes scanned the horizon, lips parting softly in a breath of hope. "We have burned away the shadows that divided us," she said. "Now begins the work of rebuilding. Together." Tawa nodded, a quiet smile breaking through the grime and weariness. "Bound by blood and destiny, our people will rise, stronger, wiser, and free." The amulet at Naya's chest glowed faintly under the fading sun, the steady pulse of ancient power now a beacon of life and peace. Under the vast, endless sky of the west, the warriors stood united, no longer fragmented by fear or division, but made whole by the strength of their bonds forged in fire and hardship. Their story, written in sweat, blood, and hope, had reached its turning point. A new dawn waited just beyond the horizon, a future born from the courage of one woman's sacrifice and the unwavering spirit of a people bound forever by the desert's burning sun.